What if the most secure place on Earth wasn't a fortress, but a stage? And what if the greatest heist in history wasn't about stealing gold, but proving it was never there? This is Divergence Point. For decades, the world believed in a myth. Not a legend of gods or monsters, but a myth of metal and trust. Deep in the hills of Kentucky, behind granite walls, armed patrols, and a 22-ton steel door, lay Fort Knox, the most famous vault in human history. Inside, it was said to hold 8,133 tons of gold, more than any other nation on Earth. This wasn't just wealth. It was a promise, a silent guarantee that the US dollar, no matter how many billions were printed, was still anchored to something real, something eternal, something you could hold in your hand. But myths are fragile, and in 2025, this one shattered. It didn't happen with a bang, it happened with a click. On a cold March night, a video appeared on the dark web. No fanfare, no announcement, just a file titled Fort Knox Interior 2025-0317.mp4. Within hours, it was mirrored on Telegram, Reddit, and even mainstream financial forums. By dawn, it had been viewed over 2 million times. The footage was raw, unedited, shot on a high-end handheld camera. It showed a team of 5 figures in black tactical gear moving through dimly lit corridors beneath Fort Knox. They bypassed laser grids, disabled motion sensors, and used stolen biometric keys to open inner doors. The audio captured their breathing, the scrape of boots on concrete, the hum of distant generators. Then, they reached the vault. The camera panned slowly across the interior, row after row of empty shelves, rusted metal rods, dusty labels that read ingot number 1042-400OZ, but nothing beneath them. No gold bars, no gleaming yellow metal, no treasure. Just silence and the echo of a lie that had held the global economy together for nearly a century. One of the intruders whispered, "It's all gone since the 70s. They didn't take anything. They didn't leave anything behind, except the video itself, uploaded from a satellite terminal in the Nevada desert before they vanished into the night." The group called themselves The Ledger, a shadowy collective of rogue hackers, ex-CIA analysts, and financial anarchists who believed the global financial system was a house of cards built on deception. Their mission wasn't theft, it was exposure. And they succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Within 6 hours, the video went viral. Gold prices spiked 120%. The US dollar plummeted 35% against the euro, yen, and yuan. US Treasury yields jumped to 18% as investors fled in panic. ATMs in London, Tokyo, and Dubai ran dry as people rushed to withdraw cash. Oil-producing nations froze all dollar-denominated transactions. The White House issued a statement within the hour. "This is a sophisticated deepfake. Fort Knox remains fully secured. The gold is intact." But no one believed them because the world already knew the truth. No independent audit of Fort Knox has been allowed since 1974. Let that sink in. 51 years, half a century of silence, while every other major gold reserve, Switzerland, Germany, China, welcomes periodic inspections, the United States has kept its vault sealed tighter than a tomb. Even President Donald Trump, who once promised full transparency, backed down twice when pressed to allow an audit. In 2017, he told reporters, "We'll look into it." By 2018, the topic was dropped. In 2019, he was asked again. This time, he simply said, "It's not necessary." Why? The answer lies in history. In 1971, President Richard Nixon made a quiet but world-altering decision. He ended the Bretton Woods system, severing the last official link between the US dollar and gold. From that moment, money became pure trust, a digital entry, a printed note, a belief in American stability. But what few know is that in the years leading up to 1971, the US was hemorrhaging gold. Foreign governments, France, Germany, Japan, were redeeming their dollars for physical gold at an alarming rate. By 1970, over 60% of America's official gold reserves had already been shipped overseas. So what happened to the rest? Officially, it's still there. Unofficially, it was spent. During the economic chaos of the 1970s, oil shocks, stagflation, secret wars, the U.S. government quietly liquidated its remaining gold to cover deficits, prop up failing banks, and fund covert operations that could never appear on a public ledger. The vault wasn't robbed, it was emptied by its own guardians. And for 50 years, they maintained the illusion, because as long as the world believed the gold was there, the system held. But belief is a fragile thing. When the Ledger released their video, they didn't just expose an empty vault, they exposed the foundation of modern finance, trust without verification. The U.S. Congress, facing global pressure and domestic panic, had no choice. In an emergency session, they voted unanimously to authorize the first independent audit of Fort Knox since Gerald Ford was president. 3 days later, a team of auditors from the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, and the World Gold Council arrived at the gates of Fort Knox. They were escorted by armed National Guard units. Cameras were banned, but the world watched through satellite imagery and live updates from news helicopters. They entered the vaults at 10:03 a.m. They emerged at 2:17 p.m. They did not speak to the press. They handed a single sealed report to the Speaker of the House. The headline the next morning splashed across every major newspaper on Earth. Fort Knox empty. Gold missing since mid-1970s. The official explanation was clinical. During periods of extreme fiscal stress, strategic reserves were reallocated to stabilize global markets. The decision was made at the highest levels of government to preserve economic continuity. In other words, we spent it, and we lied about it for 50 years. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. China announced it would no longer accept dollars for oil. Saudi Arabia followed within hours. Russia demanded all future trade be settled in gold or rubles. The European Central Bank froze all purchases of U.S. Treasury bonds. Overnight, the dollar lost its status as the world's reserved currency. Wall Street collapsed. The S&P 500 dropped 42% in 1 week. Pension funds evaporated. Retirees saw their life savings turn to dust. But the most chilling moment came not in a boardroom, but in a small grocery store in rural Ohio. An elderly man walked up to the counter with a loaf of bread and a carton of milk. He pulled out a $100 bill. The cashier looked at it, then at him, and said quietly, "Sorry, sir, we only take gold now." That single sentence marked the end of an era, because money was never about paper, it was about trust. And once trust is gone, even the strongest vault in the world is just an empty room. In the months that followed, a new financial order began to emerge. The IMF launched a global stability token, a digital currency backed by a basket of real assets: gold, oil, rare earth minerals, and clean energy credits. China and Russia formed a Eurasian Reserve Alliance, settling all trade in physical gold and digital yuan. Even the U.S. was forced to join on new terms. But the real victory wasn't economic, it was psychological. For the first time in a century, the world realized power doesn't come from having gold, it comes from controlling the story about gold. And the story had changed. Today, Fort Knox stands as a museum, a monument to the age of illusions. Tourists walk through the empty vault, reading plaques that explain how a lie held the world together for 90 years. Children ask, "Was the gold ever really there?" And their parents reply, "It doesn't matter. What mattered was that we all believed it was." So the next time you hold a dollar bill, ask yourself, is this backed by metal, by law, or by a secret buried under Kentucky stone that no one dared to uncover? Because in the end, the greatest vault isn't made of steel, it's made of silence. And once that silence is broken, nothing is ever the same again. This is Divergence Point. The questions we explore here at Divergence Point are complex, but they are the ones that will define our future. If you believe this conversation is important and want to be part of a community that isn't afraid to ask the big what ifs, then consider subscribing to our channel. Activate the notification bell so you never miss the next Divergence Point in our journey. We have so much more to explore together. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and take care.